Welcome to the Q Podcast.
Q is about conversation.
If we're really concerned about ending poverty, we've got to be more concerned about creating justice.
Our cultural products as Christians need to both defy and resonate with the culture.
And God's doing amazing things. His church is expanding, his church is growing.
It's not what's the purpose of my life, it's what is the purpose that's been assigned.
Stay curious, think well, advance good. This is Q.
Welcome to a new edition of the Q Podcast. I'm just so glad that you join us. I'm glad that you join us every week. I know you've kind of scrolled through these titles and try to decide which ones you're going to be able to listen to today, and you probably, like me, have many more you want to listen to, but you can only pick a few. Well, I'm glad you picked today, because the talk that you're going to get to hear today is from one of the best experts in this idea of understanding storytelling and understanding it from the perspective of how it actually shapes every single thing we're involved in, from the work that you do, whether it's in marketing, whether it's the letters that you write or marketing copy or a book that you're writing or a speech that you're about to give, or the way in which you're trying to compel those around you that you're responsible for towards the bigger vision that God's called you to. This is going to be an incredible 18 minutes. Bobette Buster is someone that the industry, the film and movie industry, relies on because of her expertise in storytelling. She's a story consultant for Disney, for Pixar. She's training their staff, their teams in how to think about storytelling, some of the best at storytelling. And so you're hearing from somebody who's been studying the art of storytelling much longer than it's been a cool thing to study. Over 25 years of experience. She's done so much work. She's an adjunct professor at the University of Southern California School of Cinematic Arts, Peter Stark program. And she's somebody who cares a lot about this Q community, cares about us getting it right, cares about us understanding the dynamics of storytelling. Because if you truly believe you have one of the greatest stories to tell, then we better be doing the best job at sharing it. And we better be seeing the story that God's trying to tell through our own lives. And so I want you to listen in to this talk, The Arc of Storytelling by Bobette Buster, and sit back and during it, just reflect, how can you apply this? What is it that you could learn for not only the work that you do, but think about it for yourself. What is the epiphany that possibly God's trying to break through to you as you listen in to what Bobette has to share?
So is anyone in here under 21 years old? Okay, good. So we're all born in the Industrial Revolution era. Shouldn't be any news to you what that was like. I want to talk about the most influential storyteller from that era, a man by the name of Charles Dickens. Anybody want to admit to not knowing who he is? And he wrote a book about his childhood, David Copperfield, which revealed all the atrocities of child labor. He enabled people to see that world. What Charles Dickens also did, apart from many of his masterpiece works, was he created serialized storytelling. And apparently people would storm the ships at the docks at New York Harbor just to get the latest edition of Little Dorrit coming hot off the press from England. So at the same time in the Industrial Revolution, what we have, of course, and I'm providing context, this is not news, all right? But the projector, and as Kevin Kelly said earlier this morning, you know, it wasn't just Edison who created the projector, but what Edison's real genius was that he was a businessman, and he knew how to patent something, he knew how to market it, and he said he wanted to do for the eye what he'd already done for the ear. But the thing is, Edison was a man who thought in terms of widgets and units. He didn't care about story, didn't care one lick about it. And so what he did was he created a monopoly that only he could and his friends could put out little one-reelers. And they put them in these little screening rooms. And this happened at the same time as the immigrant wave. Now, I'm making a point here. People coming from all over the world who could not speak English. So it was a perfect medium for them. And this was magic. They were paying 5 cents to see this. This is, if you adjusted this for inflation, it would be $6.50 today, and that's the average cost of a ticket in the Midwest. So you're getting more bang for your buck now than you did then. And so that was in the 1880s. And then, you know, what upset Edison was that every Thursday people were lining up around the block for the biograph films, and he didn't allow stars' names, directors' names. Well, he was furious. He says, I put before them all these films, they should see the films I give them. And no, what was happening was the audience was determining which films they liked, and it turned out to be those films with story. It turned out to be the films with Charlie Chaplin, Mary Pickford, directed by D.W. Griffith. Curses, people have a voice, oh no. So Edison was forced to finally give up his control. He was forced all the way in an antitrust suit that went all the way to the US Supreme Court. And along the way, because the people were demanding stories, they got better. So my point is, it was a trial and error business. Nobody knew, okay? This was the very first action film, hand painted each frame. Warner Brothers themselves sold the family mule, took it on the road, made a fortune, and that's why we have Warner Brothers films. This was the last scene in the film. And it was to the audience at that time in 1903 what Paranormal Activity is today. Terrifying, right? So, just saying. But anyway, D.W. Griffith, 1915, is reading Charles Dickens once again, and the penny drops. He finally realizes that, hey, you know, there's such a thing as parallel stories. We can cut into them. And all of a sudden, he recognizes the fact that you can tell multiple stories at the same time, and he invents editing. Now, my point to this is it took 25 years to figure this out. We're waiting for our D.W. Griffith, if you will, right now in the internet world and the explosion of transmedia. That's what we're calling seeing stories on multiple platforms, like The Matrix, going from video games to theater. So this is the time we've gone from the pen to the typewriter to ideas on paper that we would then, broadcast to each other on emails. This is the content creation age. No news to all of you. But I went to an event in Europe, and they were talking about the gross national product of the United States is driven by the copyright class. I thought, really? Then we should be more powerful. But we're not. But the copyright is not just Hollywood, it's also anyone who owns a copyright on something. And so it's generally understood that we're in the age of story. That's what we've been talking about today. What's the story behind all the things that we do? What's the context? Why do people buy the things we want them to buy? We want to give them a good story around it. But I believe the future of the 21st century is how well we tell the story. Because we've mastered all the arts of cinema storytelling insofar as cinematography and directing and computer graphics, all that, but we have yet to fully master storytelling itself. Because, as I said, it's a trial and error business. And so, I was flummoxed a few weeks ago when I heard the news media railing on about why would Senator Chris Dodd leave his powerful post in the Senate just to run this little celebrity business, the Motion Picture Association. Well, let's see which is more powerful than the US Senate. Some vital statistics. The number 2 export in the world, US entertainment. That includes music, video games, etc. It's the only business, it's one of the few that maintains a positive trade balance in all markets all over the world. US Hollywood is 1/3 of the world market as far as box office. And the point to this is that 20% of these films are in 3D. That's just within 1 year. So how many of you would have seen at least one of these films this year? Anybody want to admit to staying in for the whole year? Right. What do these films have in common? Anybody want to speculate? I'll tell you in a second. The point is that US entertainment is still the cheapest form of entertainment for anyone to go to, for families, by far, than theme parks, sports, concerts, even collecting iTunes downloads. You can watch a movie for free on television. The point is that all those movies, what they held in common was they were about people, characters, who faced a fear and overcame it, discovered the courage to become fully alive or the living dead. And those are the films that succeed. Because what we've discovered is that cinema is the art form of transformation. It has evolved in the 80 years that we've been doing development, and it tells us, the audience tells us what they want. So just to say, the 6 major studios release about less than 100 films a year. They make 12, around 12 each at 100 million. They acquire the rest in markets like Sundance and Toronto, etc. But only 1 in 10 of those will be a success. 6 out of 10 will fail. The 60,000 projects a year are registered at the Writers Guild. So what are the odds, right? 1% odds. But keep in mind that we now, look at Rembrandt and Van Eyck and all the great Renaissance painters as what great artists they were, but they were coming out of a whole mix of hundreds of artists trading secrets and ideas and trying to make it to the top. Same thing happened in Vienna. We now only know about 10 or 20 great composers, but Vienna was the Hollywood of the day for anybody wanting to write symphony compositions. The point is, the business is a research and development business. If we knew what we were doing, we wouldn't be doing the research. And that's why people say, why can't they make movies like they used to? You don't want to see the movies they used to make. I've seen them. There's only about 10% a year that are worth keeping, which is to say, what are we doing when we're looking at movies? We're wanting to know what the audience wants. The audience wants transformation. They want to see someone experiencing becoming fully alive, or a cautionary tale as we see them make a choice that makes them the living dead. And many of the films that we take into our hearts are about people who are about to become the living dead. So this is the hunt in Hollywood for the big idea. And what is a big idea that works? Well, you might say a big idea is something that has the content that you could exploit synergistically in all markets. You could make theme parks out of this, Broadway shows. Pixar makes about $1 billion from its lunchboxes alone. What a wonderful business to be in. And if it was that easy, we'd all be doing it, right? But it's not just about the merchandising capabilities, and clearly that's what Hollywood per se is looking for, is those franchising possibilities. It's about those characters we take into our hearts, that we cherish, that we want to spend time with, as if they're members of our family. And these are the characters that move culture. And so I want to talk a little bit about what is the real issue of storytelling. I don't know if any of you have read the book, looking for it, Uses of Enchantment by Bruno Bettelheim. He survived the Holocaust, went on to become a leading child therapist affiliated with the University of Chicago. And what he discovered is that the children who had been in the death camps, who had been read the true Brothers Grimm fairy tales, these children had been taught that someday you may be thrown into an oven. Someday a wolf may come to the door. But guess what? There is an inexorable force in the universe there to support you. If you will keep going, you will discover the faith, the courage to move on. And children would be psychologically prepared. Okay, it's true. Someday we may all experience great rejection. Our children may put us in nursing homes. We will have broken hearts. And then we die, okay? So what are we going to do, right? And so this film tells you to not take your value from that, but to love anyway, and to take heart and cherish each day. Now, John Lasseter and Ed Catmull said that when this animation team brought in this sequence, they finally understood what Pixar was about, and they were willing to go to the dark side of any idea in order to show the transformation of it to the opposite. And that's why we have such great films as Up and the rest of their other great films. So they take a theme that all of us can relate to. So let's go back in time to Shirley Temple. What's so important about this? 1935. Shirley Temple was the #1 international box office star in the world. Fox purposely had her put her hand in a black man's hand. And it was the first positive image we had in America of black and white relations. It was the whole beginning of social progressive reform, just like Charles Dickens illuminating Victorian England to understand child labor. And she danced with Bojangles in all of her #1 hit films internationally. And so what we look for in movies is characters who go from the ordinary to the extraordinary, or from the extraordinary to the ordinary. And finally, I want us to look at this. People will say, oh, glamour and Hollywood's only about the celebrity culture and it's all shallow values. But when I hear that, I can't help but remember this. Sonja Henie was a Norwegian ice skater who had a moment in the late 30s where she herself was an international #1 box office star. She was the beloved favorite of a little girl stuck in a room in Amsterdam. And when they were trying to preserve her room back to its original state, they discovered this photo. And I like to think that this photo brought Anne Frank great comfort. That's the only thing she had as she wrote her diary. Such are the uses of enchantment in our medium. Anne Rice and F. Scott Fitzgerald said there are really only two themes in storytelling: reinvention, which Cinderella is the ultimate reinvention story, as is the American Western, as was Avatar, and the story of Susan Boyle. Reinvention, right? That's what we look for in all of our stories, is that aspect of transformation. But the other thing that's most important theme in storytelling is the story of redemption. This inexorable force that everybody wants to experience a change and they don't have a name for it. They don't know what to call it. And it can even be the dark story of anti-redemption. And that's the cautionary tale where you see someone choose to become the living dead. And we watch those with great fascination and horror because it could be us. So, in closing, I'd like to say that it was the Shawshank Redemption was a failure at the box office. It became a #1 box office hit in Blockbuster Video. It was on the cover of the New York Times because the audience discovered it months after it was released. It is now one of the most beloved, iconic films of all time because it's about a character discovering the courage to hope. That's all we want to see in films, is characters trying to become the very best they can be and to experience what it is to be fully alive.
I hope you enjoyed that. It's so fun listening to Bobette talk. You can just hear it in her voice. She's an expert. She thinks deeply about these things. And some of the film clips and the ways that she was describing these parts of the story, you just go, man, I never quite caught that. I never saw that. I didn't understand why they did that, but now I feel like I'm seeing behind the curtain and I'm understanding how great stories are told and why I can start to see some of these elements show up in the movies that I love and the things that I enjoy. But I hope also that not only was it interesting and curious from that perspective, but it started getting you thinking about your own story, your own communication skills, the way in which that you're compelling people to be involved, to be engaged, to understand the depths of story and why story as human beings is so powerful and such a powerful way of conveying not only information, but also virtue, character, cautionary tales, the kinds of things that actually shape us as human beings. And so as you go forward this week, be a great storyteller, be a better storyteller. I'll remind you that you can go watch Bobette deliver this talk online at qideas.org. It's right there on our homepage, and you can kind of see some of these clips. You can look at some of the slides, and you can actually experience it there. And I would also encourage you, take a moment to gather with some friends and have that conversation about your stories. Maybe try to tell your stories in a better way because you've been influenced by that. And then as you make your plans for the spring, just know that in April 11th through 13th, Q 2018 is happening. It's hard to believe that it's already here again. Our team's been working hard, planning for this, and I'm excited to say that Bobette Buster is going to be with us. She's going to be with us again at Q. It's been 5 years since she's been with us, and she's going to be back with us, participating in helping us better understand storytelling. We're going to create a unique experience that allows you to go deeper with her and understanding how story can inform the way that you think about your life, your purpose, how you're leading in the place that you've been called. And so you can learn more about that at qideas.org/Q2018, Q2018. And we hope you'll start making plans now to join us. The event is already over 50% sold out. And so get your table now. Invite your friends. Come be a part of that with us, where you're going to hear so many talks like the one you just heard that are going to just alter your reality. They're going to change the way you view the world, the way you view your role as a person of faith in the midst of this world. You're going to be inspired and encouraged. But some of the best parts are all the great people that you meet that you can't pick up when you just listen to a talk on a podcast or you listen to it online. And we want you to meet those people. We want you to find the connections that God has for you as your story continues to play out. So we'll look forward to continue to learn together and being together again on this next episode of Q Ideas Podcast.